Looking to take your sports knowledge to the next level? Just a fan of wrestling and entertainment? You're in the right place. Welcome to The Show with your hosts, Hollywood JDT and Stuntman Kirk.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a brand new episode of The Show. I am the one and only Hollywood JDT, and my co-host is none other than Stuntman Kirk. How are you doing, brother?
I'm doing okay, sir. Doing all right. Kind of a rough weekend for Denver sports, but we'll talk about that here in just a second.
I agree. So we're going to focus this whole episode just in on the Denver sports. We're going to talk Avalanche. We're going to talk Nuggets. We're going to get into some Bronco talk and a little bit of Rockies. And then later this week, we're going to have a Money in the Bank pre-show, fully focused just on WWE's Money in the Bank, and we'll kind of cover that then. But let's get right into it for this week. We're talking sports. Let's talk about it. You jinxed them by picking against them. You jinxed the Avalanche.
How does that work then, since I picked the Nuggets to win and they let me down? So we'll start with the Avs. I'm not upset at all, actually. They had a tremendous season. They played their hearts out. It was a unfortunate way to end the year with that goal that was called back for the offsides. A lot of people will argue that it wasn't offsides, or that at least the replay, it wasn't clear, decisive, perfect angle to determine that goal should have been reversed because of the offsides. But I'm not upset with the Avalanche at all. They battled. They played so hard through these playoff series against Calgary and then San Jose. They did the best they could. I just think they were outmatched by a more experienced veteran team.
No, I agree. I think you're talking to a team that's very young. You're talking to a team that hasn't really been in those situations. We kind of talked about it that, San Jose was probably the most dangerous team that they were going to go up against, and they made it a fight. They made it a hell of a series, but it just wasn't in the cards. I mean, the fact that they got where they got to shows promise for this team. I have a way different feeling on the Avalanche game than I do on the Nuggets so much, but with kind of the way that they pushed it and they ended, I think it's a good building right now for the Avs. And I'm as much as it sucks, I'm not surprised that they lost. They definitely lost to, I think, the better team on there. I think if San Jose makes it all the way and wins, all people are going to remember, though, is the 2-7 game bad calls, the one against Las Vegas and then the one against us, and just those calls that kind of turned the tide of it and changed it up a little bit more than it probably should have. But that's also on the teams for putting themselves in that situation. But I do think you look at the Avalanche, you look at just the farm system that they have. They got the Eagles, who made the playoffs. They have the Utah Grizzlies, who made the playoffs. And a lot of those guys who are working their way through the system, trying to make their way up to the, to the NHL, including whoever they bring in next year. I definitely think that they're in the right place right now. They have the system in place to be a contender and to be a team that can truly push it for the next few years. Maybe they overachieved a little bit this year, but they definitely, I think, have promise going forward in the future.
Well, I told you that, when we had our last show, when we talked about this game and this matchup, that I felt that the Avalanche could get past San Jose, that they would be the clear-cut favorites to win the Stanley Cup. So, there's still probably maybe a couple defensemen away. I still am not convinced they are solidified at the goalie position, even though they played better as the season went on, or I should say, especially in the playoffs. They were too dependent on their front line, which they were all season. So it's not a surprise as how it played out in the two series against Calgary and San Jose. But I think if they can get a couple more pieces, defensemen, and then, if they're confident with their goalie, great. If not, then kind of look into that, and then they can probably be more of a contender and probably be a higher seed going into next year, which should help their chances, I think, going forward. So
No, and I agree with you. I think goalie is probably one of their biggest concerns. They in the first half of the season, it was really a concern, all the way up until kind of that last push towards the playoffs, and then it kind of started coming along. It seemed like, at least playoff-wise, it was kind of that same way. But I mean, being up north, up by Fort Collins, up in Loveland, and that, being an Eagles season ticket holder, I see kind of the goalies they have there. They have Martin, who the Avalanche believe in, being a few years away. They have Francouz, was it Pablo Francouz, who came up to the Avs this year, played in a game, played in a couple, was a backup guy in there for a few times. So he's somebody that's growing for that team. If he stays with them, he's somebody that will probably get pulled up at some point. But they're paid a lot of money to the two goalies that they have. I think one of them probably, should go this year. And, they should look at kind of bringing up some new blood. They did go out and sign, let me see here if I can get an Adam Werner to a futures deal, or what do they call it, an entry-level contract. So, I mean, it's another person that they put out there that they signed to get into the system and try to get them brought up. So I definitely think they know that goalie at the top is a problem, but they have the pieces there to kind of be able to do it. But those contracts are going to be what's going to make it hard.
So we'll see. Like I said, I'm a little more optimistic with how the Avalanche ended their season versus how the Nuggets ended their season, even though I guess you can make the argument they kind of mirrored each other, although I think probably, and this is our nice segue into the Nuggets, that, I think the Nuggets probably had higher expectations just based on how well they played all year. Even with that slump they kind of hit kind of mid-last of the year, that, you kind of expected them to at least make the Western Conference Finals. And I'm going to be honest, man, I think the Nuggets choked. I think they had a perfect opportunity. I think they should have won Game 6. Not in terms of the effort they put out, but just that they had all the momentum on their side. There's no reason why they couldn't have gotten to They couldn't have gone into Portland and won that game and took in the series, and then faced Golden State, who doesn't look like the same Golden State. And not saying the Nuggets would have won that game or that series, but I think I would have liked to have seen that happen. I think they would have given them a good fight. Instead, they blow Game 6 completely, and then they blow a 17-point lead and just totally drop an egg in the fourth quarter. So I didn't know how you felt about it, or your feelings after that series ended against the Trailblazers.
It's funny. I was at the Rockies game, and they put up the first quarter. They put up halftime. They kind of put up a couple little updates, and then they stopped putting any updates up. which is a really bad sign when the stadium's like, yeah, cheering all crazy when they see the first few updates, and then nothing. And I looked at my phone and was able to kind of follow along with one of the live streams of the game for like the last minute, right at the end of the Rockies game with it. But man, watching it and just seeing that they've given up all those, they went 13 missed three. I think they had 13 straight 3-pointers that they missed. I don't think there's any other way to say it except for that they choked. I think in a couple weeks, DMAC mentioned on the fan, in a few weeks you can talk about how this was a good season, that they showed growth overall season to season. But right now with where you sit with them, I think with the Avs you can say that they kind of overreached. They were that team that was the underdog very much going in from the very first series. But I think with the Nuggets, they were supposed to win that game. They were supposed to win this series. And every time they were supposed to win, they lost.
And I think
the only game that they were supposed to win that they won was Game 5 that they blew out the Trailblazers. And just like you said, then they go back to Portland and they choke. They gave it up there, and then they come back here. A huge lead. You have the Pepsi Center rocking. And it was just there's no way to describe it other than, like you said, a choke. As much as I hate to agree with you on that, that's what they did. I mean, they choked at the biggest point, and I think hopefully they can turn it around next season and kind of learn from it. But it's not a good. I don't take anything positive out of this loss right now.
No, and I think what I honestly think is this going 7 games against San Antonio and having to go 7 games against Portland worked against them severely. They were clearly tired. They were worn out. I think the moment got too big for them in that fourth period. Jokic played amazing throughout the playoffs. I think he's a superstar in the making, but I think they need another big time player. I don't know if Jamal Murray is that guy. He certainly didn't play that way against Portland in the last 2 games, that's for sure. But they need to get that other superstar to take some pressure off Jokic, because he's not the player who's like, he'll play lights out for you and he'll score and he'll get that, triple double, whatever. But he's not the type that you can, at periods on the line, games on the line, give him the ball. He's going to deliver kind of player. That's not really his game. He needs, if he's going to be, the Scottie Pippen, he needs kind of like a Michael Jordan on this team. And like I said, I don't know if Jamal Murray's the guy. He's very young. He's 22. He's got plenty of basketball left in him. I didn't see it in the playoffs, unfortunately. And like you said, and referring back to the fan and what D-Mac said, maybe in 2 or 3 weeks we can look back on this and feel better about the Nuggets season overall. I guess it'll depend on how Portland does against Golden State, how Golden State does against Portland, how the finals play out, and we'll see how we feel about it. Right now, I just feel like it was a giant missed opportunity. I don't know if they would have gotten past Golden State. I would venture to guess they wouldn't have. But I think I think it was expected, and I think they had the talent, and I think their season dictated that they should have gone to the Western Conference Finals. And to me, the fact they didn't make it there, and they didn't make it there the way they did, which was to blow that huge lead they had, and then to totally completely lackluster fourth period against the Trailblazers. It's definitely disappointing.
No, I agree with you. And I think that's, that definitely, whether it was them being tired, whatever the excuse can be there. And I truly think at this point, that's what it has to be. There's no, when it came down to it, the Trailblazers stepped up at the end of the game and they took control of the end of the game. They took control of it in Game 6 and in Game 7. And the Nuggets didn't. They fell. And I think Murray has, extremely young, just like Joker, and I think he, that has the ability to become that player and to reach that level and to get to that next level and be that big, solid number 2 guy. But they definitely need a third. They don't have one right now, and they don't have, I think, anybody, even on the bench wise, that seems like they can step into that number, into that 3 spot and be a true impact player to make those other guys better. And hopefully that's something that this offseason they fix and they go find somebody that can be that big number 3.
Well, we'll see. Like I said, the one benefit you can take from the playoff series, the season, is that Jokic is definitely a superstar in the making. I mean, he's already a superstar. I know there's some people, they'll criticize his body, his physique, his shooting skills, just the way he goes about playing the game. But I think he's going to be that staple for the Denver Nuggets for years to come, provided they're willing to pay him, provided he wants to stay here. He's not given any indication that he's looking forward to free agency or anything like that. So I think we're going to be fortunate to have him around. Jamal Murray, we'll see what happens there. I don't want to be down on him. Sometimes you get in that moment and you think the moment's going to be one thing, and then it turns out to be something totally different. I think for him, it just got too big for him. He got too tired. He got too careless, maybe scared even. I hate to say that for athletes because, you just don't know what their mindset is. And I don't think he's ever going to tell you how that game went, especially that fourth period. But we'll see what happens as the Western Conference Finals go on, and then the NBA Championship Series, the finals there, the NBA Finals, how that plays out. And then maybe we can reflect back in 2 or 3 weeks and say, you know what, all things considered, it was a good year. They got a good nucleus. I just don't know what the market that Denver is for basketball, and it's unfortunate because it's been their history for 40 years, 50 years, that how they're going to be able to attract those big name superstars, or at least a big name superstar to come here. who's going to play. I think they're going to have to. I think at some point they're going to have to make a big trade and kind of force the issue and force someone to come here, kind of like they did Allen Iverson to an extent. Chauncey Billups, when they were, they had that little run there in the late 2000s with Carmelo Anthony. We'll see if they can pull that off and maybe get that player to enjoy playing in Denver. But because my concern right now with this team is I don't want to see them, build these pieces, get like a good run going, get a good playoff team going like we had back then. We had Carmelo, and every year you just knew we were going to win or we were going to get to the playoffs. And then all of a sudden, 5 years later, 6 years, 7 years later, everyone leaves for free agency, and then we have to start all over again.
Right. I do think that one thing that comes out of this is hopefully Denver is no more of a flyover city for some of these guys. Hopefully it's someplace that guys that want to, have an impact, want to be able to, build towards a ring and stuff like that. Hopefully that's the, this is the team that they look at and they go, hey, you know what? They were close. They need just a couple pieces. I can be that piece. I want to go there because there's a good opportunity for it. And, hopefully that's what they kind of turn into this year. Hopefully they this offseason, they get that opportunity for some of the big free agents to come to them and step up to want to be here instead of, wanting to be somewhere else or wanting to be, with the Lakers who, because it's LA, not because they want to win a championship. And there's enough players out there who want to win a championship, who haven't or want another one, that I think Denver becomes a little bit more of an intriguing place. And, hopefully I'm right on that. And hopefully it plays out that way.
Well, I think we'll see. I know I say that a lot. We'll see. It's kind of where we are with the Nuggets and Avalanche right now. Like I said, I just feel better about the Avalanche's situation just because it's just perception too. Because like I said, their seasons really mirrored each other. Although the Avalanche probably, were at a lower point at one point in this year than the Nuggets were. I mean, the Nuggets they had their slumps, but the Nuggets were pretty consistent all year. The Nuggets actually hit a really bad slump there for a while, right around December, January, but were able to at least win enough at the beginning of the year that, when they kind of still were consistent at the end of the year, they were able to get that 8th seed playoff spot and then, played their guts out, which, you appreciate. And I'm not saying that the Nuggets gave up or anything like that, or they didn't try hard. It's just clear to me that I just don't think they were ready. And it's unfortunate because they just how hard they played this season and how well the season went. You just didn't want to see it end the way it did that 7th game against Portland at home that they should have won. They should have won game 6. How they get pretty much blown out in game 6, I have no idea, except they just couldn't shoot. And then they had to come here, and then all the momentum's still on their side, and they couldn't deliver. And I'm just disappointed. It's a bad feeling, but hopefully, like I said, we'll reflect back on this and it won't feel as bad a few weeks from now. And then going into the offseason, maybe they can make that one big move to try to solidify, get that third person in here, take some pressure off Murray and Jokic. So,
no, I agree. Like I said, I don't know what else to say with it. I mean, right now, it's a negative feeling off it. They choked. They dropped it when they should have won it. I mean, 2 games in a row they should have won, and they didn't win either one of them, and that's why they're out. That's why they're done. That sits completely on them and on nobody else. And, hopefully in a few weeks we're looking back as a positive of kind of where this team is going. But right now, I mean, there's no way to look at it other than this team had the chance to win. They were supposed to win. They had done everything they were supposed to do to win, and they still found a way to lose. And
so let me ask you this.
That's never a good thing.
Kevin Durant. Does he even sniff the Nuggets this after he leaves Golden State, as everyone expects him to do?
I don't know. Maybe. I really don't know. On he would. The question being is, can he come in and be that player? Can he come in and be a shooter? If he's just coming in just to be a name, we don't need a big all-star name that's going to come in and be, past his prime and done. If he can come in and actually play and actually put up the ball and be a part of the team, then, I'm all for whoever comes in. But, I don't know if Durant is in a place where he wants money or if he wants a ring. And I think that's the difference on who we're going to get in here, is somebody that is willing to try to get a ring, or are they willing just to try to, or do they just want the big, the money and the notoriety, and they want to be in that big market? And, if it's like that, then it's just like the Carmelo effect. It doesn't matter how good of a team we have or who we have around him. He's going to be looking for the door.
Yeah. There's a lot of good free agents. I'm kind of looking at the list now. Kyrie Irving, Kemba Walker, Klay Thompson, Jimmy Butler, D'Angelo Russell, Kevin Durant, obviously. A lot of big names. It's just, the other side of this too, we got to consider that, are the Nuggets willing to spend the money to get that team, get that player, really solidify this team? Once upon a time they were, and then, Carmelo left, and then that whole team fell apart. And it took them years. I mean, we're talking how many years since Carmelo left to New York till now that, now we finally have a team that we feel like now we're a contender. So I'm hoping they're willing to spend the money. I'm hoping they can lure some people in here. We have a good team. We just have to get that third big player to really bring it all together.
No, I agree. I think, it's going to be interesting to see what they do, and if they can reach that next level. I don't think they're going to have an issue paying. I mean, we've seen that with the Avalanche, that they're willing to pay out the big contract if they need to. We've seen it a little bit with the Nuggets so far. I think that they're willing to spend the money, knowing that they're there, that they're, they should be one more round higher than they are now, or than they were. But, I think they'll spend the money. I think they're willing to spend the money. It's just willing if the right person wants to come here.
All right. Well, I think we burned out the Nuggets and Avalanche talk. Should we segue back into, into the Broncos?
We can. Let's take a quick break, guys. We will be right back. When we come back, we're talking all about the Broncos. We're going to spend some time on them, including what's going to happen with Chris Harris. How is the rookie mini camp kind of going? How was that this weekend? And a whole lot more. We will be right back on the show.
The show with your hosts, Hollywood JDT and Stuntman Kirk. We'll be right back.
All right, wrestling fans. Are you guys looking for the next level of wrestling entertainment? Looking to have your own chance to be a part of the show? Well, we got the opportunity for you. Check out wrestling_pro_2005 on Instagram. It's the Glorious Universal League. They are going to be setting up. It's a brand new league kicking off, all done online. Website's coming to you, but you pick the shows. You decide how they go. You see how it plays out on TV. This thing is just kicking off. It's gaining momentum as we talk. Check it out, guys. They're a great sponsor to the show. All right, guys, so check out the Glorious Universal League. Once again, wrestling_pro_2005 on Instagram for all of the information. It's time to get in the game.
Back to the show. Here's your hosts, Hollywood JDT and Stuntman Kirk.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. All right, let's get into it. It's been a while since we talked about the Broncos. The last time we did was the draft episode, so let's get into it. Let's jump right in. Chris Harris, is he coming? Is he going to be with the Broncos this season?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Not as sure as I was when we first started talking about the Chris Harris situation, but here's how I'm looking at it. And I don't know, I'm not a cap expert. I don't know how the franchise tag specifically works, but here's what I'm thinking I know. And if I'm wrong, I apologize. Someone can correct me by all means, but he's under contract for one more year. I can't see him sitting out the entire year, because if he sits out the entire year and we hit that point where he's about to hit free agency, the Broncos are likely going to franchise tag him. And I think they're willing to do that because they're going to have a ton of money to be able to spend for the 2020 season. Money they don't have right now. So the leverage right now, despite kind of how, you're seeing it a little bit, the leverage, I think, is all with the Broncos. They can force him to sit out. If he does decide to sit out the whole year, which I just don't see him doing, then worst case scenario, they franchise him, and then they kind of force his hand that, either I play on the franchise tag or I hold out again another year. And then by that point, he's going to be approaching 32, I believe, and he will be 2 years pretty much out of football. And who's going to pay him over $50 million at that point? So, and that's kind of where we are. I don't know if people have heard, but I think I want to say it's Mike Kliss. If I'm wrong on that, please forgive me. But he's reporting that per Chris Harris Jr.'s agent, they want over $15 million a year. I am telling you right now, the Broncos are not going to be able to, nor are they willing to pay Chris Harris Jr. over $50 million this year, nor do I necessarily think they want to do that long term, even for 3 years. I think, they're more comfortable with the $12, $13 million range. I think that's more practical, more sensible, but I think Chris Harris wants to be the highest paid corner in the NFL, or at least one of them. Not that I blame him, because he sure plays that way. I can't see this ending in a scenario where the Broncos offer him $16 million a year beginning this year. Number one, they don't have the money unless they make some serious cuts that I don't think they should be making at this point with a team that's kind of in transition. And then two, I just don't think they want to be spending that money on a quarterback for, a 30-plus year-old cornerback that, I know wasn't a serious injury, but it's coming off an injury that closed out his year last year.
Hey, though, he said he's healthy. He played in the playoffs, man. And in the playoffs, you leave it all on the line. Oh, yeah, the Pro Bowl. My bad, the Pro Bowl.
I wish you were in the playoffs last year. That would have been awesome. And then we might be having a totally different conversation about his contract. But I still think, because the leverage is with the Broncos, and I don't think Chris Harris wanted to sit out for 2 years, and I don't think he's going to hold out longer than training camp. He'll show up to training camp because I think, cooler heads will prevail, and I think no matter what, he wants to be able to show another team that he is an elite cornerback, even at his age, which isn't that old, but I mean, we're talking, cornerback age. He probably has 2-3 more years left of really elite level play before, he starts to decline, a la Champ Bailey, Darrelle Revis back in the day. So my feeling is, just because of leverage with the Broncos, this is going to get worked out somehow with Chris Harris Jr. remaining here. I think the only way this changes, the only way we get into a bad situation is if Chris Harris Jr. demands a trade. Because I think at that point, if he demands a trade, he's like, nope, I'm done. I don't want to hear any more offers. This isn't going to work. You need to trade me. I'm of the belief, and you can give your side of it when I'm done. But I'm of the belief that once a player tells you, I no longer want to play for you, you got to move that player. Because then at that point, it just becomes kind of a cancerous situation. If the team starts to slide, you got people asking about Chris Harris Jr. If the team, it's just a distraction you don't need if that's the route Chris Harris decides to take. I don't think we're there yet. From the sounds of it, Elway's going to submit his offer. Hopefully there's some kind of middle ground that can be met here, but if they're holding firm at $16 million a year or over $15 million, whatever it is, and Elway doesn't want to pay it, which I can't blame him if he doesn't, then we could get into a dicier situation.
I think overall, if Harris chooses not to play at all this year, it's not even a talk about franchising him, because he has to show up by I think it's week 13 or week 14 to actually get credit for the season. So he's not going to sit out the whole season. He'll show up in time. Actually, might even be week 8 or something like that. But whenever that timeline is that he has to report to be able to get credit for the year, because if he doesn't, it's all over again next year, because they still have a year on his contract. So he can't sit out. It's not the same as it was with Bell. He could sit out off the franchise tag if he wanted to, because he's already a free agent at that point. But he can't sit out the whole year on this, when he has 1 year left, because it's just going to carry until he plays. and finishes that deal. I do think if he comes out and says, hey, I want to be traded, at this point, I think even he knows his market's pretty much non-existent right now. And he's not going to get to go somewhere that he wants to. Now, you're talking closer to the trade deadline. That might be something that they look at because it might become, there's that team that just needs that, a little bit more of a corner. The Browns, who are going to be the Super Bowl, winners this year, they might need a corner finally. But I mean, I think I don't think he's going anywhere. I think he's going to be with Denver throughout. I don't see him changing that. I don't see, I think he'll show up by the time training camp starts because I don't think he wants to be looked at as a cancer in the locker room or among his, peers. And I think even for another team, he doesn't want to be the guy who's holding out, refusing to play at the end of it. He wants a better deal, but if he doesn't get it, he still has a contract he has to play on. And, Elway, whether you agree with it or don't, or agree with his draft choices or not, at the end of the day, Elway has kind of kept the same pattern. If you have a contract that is there, he doesn't do well when, he doesn't play the game of, oh, you want a new deal? Okay, you're going to sit out till you do it. He plays the hardball of like, no, you have the contract. We can review it later. And that's worked in times. It's also worked against them. That they lose like a Malik Jackson for waiting and stuff like that, we very well might lose Harris after this year. But I think now, I think Harris shows up, he plays. I don't think I love Chris Harris. I have a Chris Harris jersey. There's no way you pay him $15 million a year. If you do, you have to sacrifice other parts of the team to do that. That just doesn't make sense. But he's not a player that should be in that 15 million range. I mean, the guy that was at Jacksonville just redid their cornerback, and he's now the highest paid cornerback in the league. That's not Chris Harris. And Chris Harris is probably better than that cornerback, but Chris Harris is also coming down the mountain. He's not climbing up it anymore.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think if Elway had to do it over again, he would have given Von Miller that same contract, knowing how the last 2 years have played out?
I think so, because I think, Miller is a franchise player. He is a true – Chris Harris is not a Von Miller. Chris Harris is one of the best cornerbacks in the league, one of the best cover backs in the league completely. But he is not a Von Miller. Von Miller steps on that field, and no matter who's on that line, Von Miller still makes an impact. Von Miller still makes people around him better. He still makes people that much more. Chris Harris does, don't get me wrong, Chris Harris being able to shut down somebody in the backfield helps that front line, helps the defensive back, or helps our linebackers, helps our offense or our defensive line be able to get to the, into the quarterback more and it's able to disrupt that whole timing. But he doesn't make the cornerback next to him better. He doesn't make, the safeties better. He doesn't make the team around him as a whole just better because he steps on that field. Not in the same way Von Miller does. Miller is, Von Miller's a John Elway type player. He's that guy who he can be that cornerstone no matter what, and that team's he's going to have an impact no matter who is on that field with him.
Well, I think and I don't know, I'm not pretending to know John Elway's mind or the inner workings of what goes on within the administrative part of the Broncos organization, but I think there's probably a little bit of buyer's remorse, just how much money they gave him and how little wins they've gotten since then. And that's not to say Von Miller's not an amazing player that he's not a generational type player. But the fact is you paid Von Miller over $106 million, whatever it was for, and I may be totally wrong on that, but however much money, the highest paid defensive player, deservingly so. I'm not saying he didn't earn it based on especially that Super Bowl performance and that playoff run, but I think Elway, looking back on it now, probably looks at it as like, well, I could have gotten, a lot of pass rushers that could have been comparable to that, either through the draft or, lower end free agency. I could have used that money to invest more into, say, Kirk Cousins, or, if you believe Kirk Cousins is a franchise quarterback, not saying he is, I'm just using that as an example, or some of these other, high-end free agents that they haven't been able to land, partially because they don't have Peyton Manning anymore. That's obvious, but also because, I mean, they're paying quarterback money to a defensive end, linebacker, whatever you want to call him, depending on the situation, where, it hasn't really resulted in wins for him. So I think, long story short, what I'm trying to get at is I think Elway doesn't want to pay top corner, top defensive money to a cornerback who he's looking at as going, well, I mean, I've only gotten 5 and 6 wins in the last 2 years you've been on my team. So why would I invest all this money into you, sacrifice other pieces on my team, and then, it's what are the results going to be then? So I'm not saying that's necessarily factoring into the decision process. I'm just saying that if I was in charge, that would certainly factor into my decision-making process.
As much as Elway takes a lot of heat because of the players he's gotten rid of and the players he hasn't re-signed. But when you look at it, the guys, that have left, they haven't made the impact that they made with the Broncos. On the defensive side, Talib did not have the same impact going to the Rams that he did when he was here. It wasn't that bad to lose him in the big picture of where his play was at. TJ Ward, same thing. Everyone was up in arms. Oh my God, they let him go. And he got hurt, I think, right off the bat and didn't play almost the whole year. So
and they got busted with marijuana.
Right. So, I mean, that's not necessarily the leader you want and the person you want run, in the team. And Elway's been very good about that. If there's one thing Elway hasn't been good or questionable about, it's the offensive line and quarterback. But he knows defense, and he seems to have a very good pulse on getting guys signed when he wants to. He went after Wolf to keep Wolf because him and Miller are a very good team together. They play off each other so well. Shane Ray, he was willing to let him walk, before because
still unsigned, by the way.
Right, but I mean, that's the point, Hey, look, he's not worth us bringing in just because people are behind him. Like, that's not what we need. And, I think it has worked. I don't think our issues are on the defensive side of the ball at all. I think our issues all sit on the offensive side. And I think that's where Elway's put his focus to. I think if we lose, Harris, it's not the end of the world. It's not going to hurt this team. I trust the fact that they're going to build in the pieces that they need because it's worked so far. And I said, I think in that case, as much as it sounds like just being the hometown kind of voice, Elway's made the right calls on defense. They might not be the popular calls, but he's made the right calls so far, and it's worked. On offense, that's still left out there to kind of see how that's going to play out. We're very young on the offense from top to bottom, and it's going to be interesting to see how that plays and how that goes. I think overall, though, Harris is going to show up for camp. He might sit out the very first part, but I think he shows up for camp. I think he does his thing with or without a contract extension there. He's going to play it out because as much as it's, well, I want to stay, I have to protect myself. That's not going to impress anybody in the league. It's not going to make anybody go, oh, we understand. That's why you sat out for a year at, plus 30. That's just not going to work. And, I think he shows up, he plays. I think he makes an impact. I think he shows his worth. And I think we have a whole nother talk come the end of the season or late to mid season of, hey, Harris has shown he's worth it. Will they look at it now?
Fair enough. All right. Well, let's get to the second part of the Broncos talk.
One thing with the Broncos talk, did you hear the quote? And I'm going to paraphrase the quote here because I didn't hear it, but I read the quote part of it, of Flacco when he was asked, hey, are you going to mentor, Drew Lock? And the other quarterback, the rookie one that they signed, and his response was, no, that's not my job. My job's here to win games. That's the offensive or the QB coach. I want to say Sacramento. I can't think of his name.
Gangrello.
Yeah. I was thinking like Sacramento, and I'm like, that's not right. It's close, but nowhere near.
Sacramento.
But I mean, he was like, that's his job. My job's to be here. My job's to win games. That's what I'm going to do, and that's it. Where do you sit on that kind of quote and that kind of mindset?
Oh man, see, it's tough. So here's what I'm going to say about it. for me, I'm a pay it forward kind of person. I want to leave what you give me in better position, better condition, better situated than as I left it, because I think that, especially in a situation like football, NFL, it's all about legacy, and it's all about, you may be a huge superstar. You may be one of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history. I'm not saying Joe Flacco is. I'm just saying as an example. But at the end of the day, you are but a piece of the NFL machine, a cog in the NFL machine. And it's I believe the responsibility of players now to try to leave it better for players in the future. And I believe that in life. I believe that in sports. I believe that just in general, that, you should do what you can to leave what you are given in better position or better situation than it was given to you. Having said all that, at the same time, Joe Flacco's in a situation where he's got to fight for. I mean, he's not like, we're not talking about Peyton Manning, John Elway, Joe Montana, Tom Brady. He's not like a Hall of Fame quarterback with, this elite resume where, he's like scoffing at the idea of, someone taking over his job. I mean, there's legitimate, as minute as it may be, there's some controversy here with the Drew Lock drafting, in that there's an expectation Drew Lock's going to start with the next few years. So for Flacco, right now he's just fighting for his job and fighting for his situation. He doesn't have time to worry about, mentoring or tutoring someone who's at some point going to replace him either way, unless he just comes out, plays lights out, we win a Super Bowl or two. Then it's a different conversation. But I mean, we're 8-8, 7-9, 9-7 over the next couple years. Drew Lock's probably going to take his job, and so for him, he doesn't have time or concern to be worrying about what Drew Lock feels or what Hogan feels or what Rippon feels. I mean, he's got to worry about learning this offense and going out there and playing lights out football, because he's playing for his job too.
No, I agree. And you know what? I think we're going to talk a little bit history with that and kind of how that's played out, even with the Peyton Mannings and all that. But we're going to take a quick break, guys. When we come back, we'll dig more into that, more into the Broncos and how Flacco should be responding, or if he's responding the right way. We will be right back, guys. This is the show.
The show with your hosts, Hollywood JDT and Stuntman Kirk. We'll be right back.
Do you have Netflix and Hulu?
Are you talking to me?
Yes, you.
Yeah, I have Netflix and Hulu.
Great. How about Amazon Prime, Google Play?
Pretty sure my wife has those. Who are you?
Well, all of that is just fine. Now it's time to get Asai TV. Asai TV has hundreds of hours of all original commercial-free entertainment, only $2.99, available on Roku and at AsaiTV.com. That's ASYTV.com.
Okay, cool. AsaiTV.com and Roku. I'll definitely check it out.
You damn right you're gonna check it out.
Okay, how did you get in my house?
Back to the show. Here's your hosts, Hollywood JDT and Stuntman Kirk.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back on the show, and let's get back into it. We were talking about Flacco not mentoring Drew Lock and the other rookie quarterbacks. Overall, top to bottom, I don't think it's his job to do it. I think, even if it, when Peyton Manning was here, Peyton Manning, knowing that he's safe, knowing that his job is good, that he's Peyton Manning, even he was not going to mentor, Brock Osweiler and do anything there. That didn't change. Elway didn't mentor, Maddox or, Kubiak or anybody that was sitting there behind him. It was the same way the whole way through. So I don't expect Flacco, who's coming in, not with a guaranteed job, just because he has some veteranness to him, to take on the role of having to mentor the rookie. His job right now is to learn this offense. It's to learn to win games. It's to figure it out and help Denver win. And if Locke and them can sit behind him and learn, then that's what they should do.
but it shouldn't be his job to reach out to them.
Yeah, and let's kind of be clear. Peyton Manning was also in a different situation with Brock Osweiler as well, because as great as Peyton Manning was, and as great as he was when he came to Denver, especially those first 3 years, he was coming off a major injury, and there was serious talk of him not being able to come back and play at any level, let alone the level he wound up playing at. So he, for his situation, he didn't have time to be wasting tutoring or teaching or mentoring Brock Osweiler either. It's a tough situation because you never want to train someone to take your job, and at least individually, kind of on a selfish standpoint, that's not how we're built. We're built competitively, especially athletes. I just feel like, and you're absolutely right about Flacco. I mean, there is absolutely no issue. I have no issue. There's no problem with him not deciding to mentor the other quarterbacks. His job is to learn this offense and to get Denver back on track with their win total. But I just feel like at some point, like in long term, like I'll bring up an example. Like I remember when Aaron Rodgers was drafted to the Packers, and Brett Favre still wound up playing out, I think, like 3 years there before Aaron Rodgers finally took over, and they asked Brett Favre the exact same thing, and Brett Favre gave the exact same answer. No, I'm not. That's not my job. My job is to win football games. Someone else needs to teach him. Ultimately it worked out for Aaron Rodgers. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL right now. Talent-wise, I think he is the best. But I think, you have to wonder if, looking back on it, now that Brett Favre's been out of the league as many years as he has, Hall of Fame quarterback, if, he's like, maybe I should have paid a little bit more forward to the players, But then again, like I said, it's a competitive nature. It's just, it's a double-edged sword. It makes more sense for someone who's probably a journeyman type quarterback to do that role or to be that mentor type quarterback than someone who's an elite quarterback, because, I mean, Tom Brady's likely not mentoring his replacement. I mean, he plans on playing another 3 or 4 years, according to him. So it's tough, and I don't know if there's really a right answer here. I look at it both ways. I just feel like at the end of the day, for me personally, I would want to leave it a little bit better off than I inherited it. And, if I'm in the situation that, let's say, Tom Brady's in or Ben Roethlisberger's in, I don't think the situation, though, applies to Joe Flacco, because Joe Flacco is fighting for his job. So for him, it doesn't really make sense for him to mentor the rookie. If they wanted that, they should have just kept Case Keenum.
Right. Well, I think it's different when you look at, different positions. The quarterback, there's one quarterback on that team. There's one, starter for that team. Von Miller's going to go work with, Shane Ray. He's going to go work with, whoever, they bring in. He's going to work with those different players to try, hey, here's what I do. I try this, I do that. Because that's what was done with him. But it's different when you have multiple guys on that on that line or in that position that are both starting at the same time, to make that team better. It's a whole lot different when you're the quarterback. And I think, I saw a comment online, well, what happens if Flacco gets hurt? How's the guy supposed to be ready? Well, that's when you would expect Flacco to say, if he was out, and he wasn't just trying to rehab to get back for that week, that's where you saw that with Peyton Manning. When he was out for the year, he sat back and he helped, He kind of played offensive coordinator on the side, and he took that role at that time because he knew that's the best impact he could have. But when you're fighting to be the guy and the only guy, I don't expect anybody in sports in that realm to do that and say, hey, I'm teaching the next guy to, to come take my job, especially in a case where in the NFL, that next guy can be the guy, he could be the guy that season that takes over for you. Flacco just had that happen to him. So I don't see any reason he's going to turn around and be like, yeah, let me help out another guy that can step in and take my job.
Well, I kind of follow Mark Schlereth school of philosophy. If anyone listens to Mark Schlereth on 104.3 The Fan in the morning show. His philosophy is, I'll teach you everything I know. I will show you the ropes. I'll be a teacher for you. I'll be in the locker room. I'll study film with you. I'll do all that. Even if you're my backup, because you're not going to be, there's no way you're tougher than me. There's no way you're better than me. I'm always going to be better and tougher than you. And I think that's a mentality that a lot of these athletes today don't necessarily have is, I'll teach you everything I know. Just because I teach you, it doesn't mean you're going to be able to beat me, though, because, I've mastered it all these years. I know what I'm doing. By the time you're ready to go, I'm ready for retirement. I'm ready to hang it up. So by all means, take my job then. So that's kind of where I look at it. Like I said, it's really a thin line, and you can make an argument consistently for both sides. I just don't think, for all the fans out there who are, I'm sure, dogging Flacco for various reasons that they shouldn't be dogging him for, but for this one in particular, I don't think it's applicable, because I think for him, he's earning a spot on this roster. He is fighting for his job, for his NFL career. And maybe that's being downplayed. Maybe people are just he's going to be the starter. Well, sure, he's going to be the starter, but I mean, what if we start the season 2-3, 2-4, 1-5? You kind of get into that kind of dynamic. Then it becomes like, oh man, now he's pressing. Now all the talks about Drew Lock and deservingly so. So for him, he's why on earth would he be worried about the second round quarterback that the Broncos drafted, when all he cares about at this point is going out there, learning this offense, and winning football games?
No, I fully agree with you on that. I don't think it's anything more than, people, I don't think anybody's really going to feel different on that. I think, the fans are going to expect what they want to see. I don't know what I'm saying. The fans are going to expect, him to come in and be Mr. Rah-Rah, and, at the same time as they're saying, Elway's the greatest. Elway didn't do any of that, Tom Brady doesn't do that. You don't see one all-star top quarterback, starting quarterback, elite quarterback who does that. They're fighting for their job, and they know that job can disappear at any moment. That's what makes them the best, is that extra push of like, I have to continue to be the best. The moment any of those guys ever just settle in and go, hey, I'm good, they fall. And, I don't think that's a case where any of them are at. And I don't expect any of our quarterbacks to do that way. I don't expect Drew Lock, if he becomes the quarterback in the future, to sit there with a rookie and mentor him on how to do it better, on how to be a starting quarterback. That's not what I expect, any of those guys to do.
All right. Well, I think we covered that topic of the Broncos. See what else. Do you know of anything else that's going on with them right now? I'm trying to think of any other newsworthy. I know they started OTAs, or not OTAs, mini camp. It's quote unquote voluntary, but it's not really voluntary mini camp that they started. According to reports, Joe Flacco is the clear and decisive quarterback winner right now, with all the three other quarterbacks on the roster kind of trailing behind. So, have you heard anything? Do you want to talk about anything else regarding the mini camp right now?
The main thing I heard coming out of, the rookie camp was that the rookies looked good, that one of the offensive line rookies got hurt. When we drafted, he was I think a free agent one or something, but he got hurt. But how different this rookie camp and even the mini camp starting out today has been different from years past. Years past after, what was the tight end that got hurt a few years ago in camp?
We had Virgil Green.
No, he was one of the rookies that he still hasn't really done anything.
Oh, Jake Butt?
Yeah. He came in, he got hurt. Butt was last year. It was the other guy.
Well, Jake Butt got hurt last year, but it was more in the regular season.
Yeah, this is somebody.
This was 4th or 5th game last year.
Yeah, this was the guy before. But he got hurt in like the rookie mini camp, and then since then they hadn't really done anything. They've kind of stayed out of it, just kind of doing more walkthroughs and more coaching and stuff like that, and not, getting into hard contact. This year, that's all different. It sounds like they jumped right in, and were actually hitting and contact and, a whole lot more physical play. They had one guy get hurt and carted off, but that's kind of a fluke thing. When those things happen, you can't predict them. I mean, they happen during walkthroughs at times. So, I do think that seeing that different attitude right out of the gate, I think can be a good thing for this team. And I think it should be a good kind of way to see how this team progresses with their toughness and stuff that got questioned a lot last year, was how tough this team was and how tough some of these players were. And I like the fact that you heard today, Fangio said, hey, one of the things, they talked about Von Miller, and he made the comment, hey, he still has a lot to learn. He made some mistakes today. And I think that shows, as good as Miller is, he can improve. And if he improves off the player he has been in the past, I can't imagine how good, he can truly be at that point.
Yeah, and I think, they needed a philosophy shift. I hate to put everything on Vance Joseph, but it really does sound like it was kind of a dysfunctional situation, just with his inexperience. At some point maybe Vance Joseph will be a great coach in the NFL. It just didn't happen here and it wasn't all his fault, but I think he's definitely to blame for a lot of it, just because of his inexperience and his kind of wishy-washy attitude with, 1 week it's this philosophy and the next week it's this philosophy. I think that's why I went with Vic Fangio, because I think he's a gritty, old school, been around the block kind of coach who's like no nonsense, and it's like, hey, this is how it's going to be. If you don't like it, then someone else will take your job. And that's kind of what this team needs right now. They lack discipline over the last few years. Von Miller, God bless him. I love him as a player. He's one of my all-time favorite Broncos. Honestly, he's probably number 2 or 3 on my list. But I think, the most frustrating part, and I can't remember, was it the San Francisco game last year where he kept jumping offside, trying to get that record? And people were like, well, that's his game. That's his game. I'm like, no, that's BS to me. It's 15 yards, and you can argue, well, if he gets a sack there and this and that, but it's like, don't hurt your team. And that should never have gotten to the point where it took 3 times on one series for him to jump off sides, trying to chase a record before something happened. That just, to me, that doesn't compute. That doesn't make sense. I know people will argue that because he's Von Miller. He gets free reign to decide how he plays what he wants, but that's just not how I view football. It's not how I view it as a fan. I think what you're going to see going forward with this coaching staff and this team is they're going to hold players accountable, and they're going to hold Von Miller accountable. And we're not going to get into a situation where Von Miller is chasing a record and putting the team in harm's way because he's being selfish, or a situation where, Aqib Talib, last game of the year, just because there's nothing to play for, he doesn't, he lets a receiver blow right by him for a touchdown or a first down or whatever, and he has to get pulled from the game. I mean, you're going to know that that's never going to happen, hopefully, on a Vic Fangio-led team. I don't sense that. I don't believe that. I think that's what the team needs right now. I'm not saying it's going to result in a Super Bowl championship first year in, but I think it's definitely going to put some players on notice who may have been kind of riding that. And I'm not necessarily specifying or singling out Von Miller here, but just some players who may not have been, I guess, doing their part or doing their best in ensuring that the team was put in the best position.
No, I agree. I think, I think we'll see out of that a true push to make the team, for the team to be better. Not the player, but the team to be better. And I think, as much as that, that's the way he plays, that's not how he should have played, with jumping off on those series, because that hurt us in that series, but there was a lot of other times of, we should have been in a better position to not give up a 4th and 20, 2 times in a game, and we do. So I think those things, those just horrible errors, are going to be stuff that will get fixed this year and will be better. But I'm very interested to see how he develops Miller, how much better Miller can be,
having a coach that doesn't just look at him as, hey, he's an all-star and, there's nothing he can improve on, but looks at him and says, hey, he's an all-star. He's one of the best players in the league, but this dude can be way better. And that's something I don't think Miller has had that. I don't think Miller's had a coach come in and go, yeah, you're good. We can make you best, So.
All right, sir. Well, anything else you want to talk about before we wrap this up?
I don't have anything other than we talked about it last week. And remember, guys, coming up in a few weeks, we are going to be covering all of Denver Comic-Con live at the Convention Center. We're going to be there for all those days. We're going to cover. We already got some interviews lined up with some different guests, more waiting on hearing on the final answers on, and more stuff we're going to do there, including just a ton of guest fan interviews of how they interact, what they like to do. It's going to be fun. We're going to be all over social media with it, hitting hopefully multiple episodes a day when we're there. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a fun time, but make sure you check us out. Guys, check us out on all of our social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. It's all out there. It's a growing fan base. We greatly appreciate you guys listening. That's everything I got. We will be back later this week for a special WWE only kind of episode. We're going to preview and give our thoughts on what is coming when it comes to Money in the Bank this weekend. That's what I got. You got anything to wrap up with?
No, just looking forward to Comic-Con. I may not be there all 3 days with you. I have, unfortunately, a Monday through Friday type job. So that's, and I'm going on vacation the following week. So taking out that Friday might be difficult for me. But I will be there Saturday and Sunday with you. You may have to go solo on Friday, which might be interesting for you. But I will definitely be there Saturday and Sunday. So I'm looking forward to that. Should be very fun. I'm a diehard nerd at heart. So I think it'll be a fun experience. Like you said, we got some interviews lined up, which I guess we should start plugging. Maybe not the WWE show, but maybe our show after that. We'll have like maybe a pre-Comic-Con show where we kind of talk about a little bit of what we're gonna do and how that's gonna play out. And then, like you said, Money in the Bank. Looking forward to that. We'll see. We'll break down the matches, kind of do our predictions, and we'll go from there.
All right, guys. Well, this has been a great episode. Thank you guys for listening. Like I said, follow us on all of our social media. But until then, we will catch you guys later this week. Thank you guys for listening. We'll see you next time.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of The Show with Hollywood JDT and Stuntman Kirk. Want to stay in the know on all things sports, wrestling, movies, and TV? Follow the show on social media at The Show Podcast. If you like today's episode, please leave a review and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time on The Show.
This has been a Phonetics production.